Hello everyone, we are group number 2 and we are to develop the audio-lingual method. First of all, what is the audio-lingual method? The audio-lingual method is a language approach that emphasizes the idea that learning a language involves forming habits through repetition and reinforcement. It reinforces the listening and speaking skills. This approach is based on repetition and memorization of phrases and sentences, and it focuses on imitation of language models, emphasizing the correct pronunciation and intonation of words. And it is important to mention that it avoids translation as well. And here we have some characteristics of the audiolingual method. The first one is repetition and drills. It strongly relies on repetition, as I mentioned before, as many times as possible until students can produce phrases or sentences accurately without hesitating too much, because this will help the students create a habit in the target language. The next one is focus on speaking and listening, but writing is introduced later when a strong oral foundation is established. Of course, reading and writing are important, but in this case, listening and speaking are the main characters. The next one is not explicit grammar instruction. By this, it doesn't mean that grammar is not important. Of course, it is important, but the teacher will introduce grammar in a smoothly way through practicing and repeating patterns. For example, if the students will learn the simple present, then the students will learn it through repetition once, twice, or maybe 3 times, as many times as possible until they understand the patterns that are required in the simple present. The next one is mimicry and memorization. The students will mimic real-life situations and memorize sentences and dialogue so that they will get acquainted with some words or phrases, and they will use those sentences in the future while having conversation with some classmates or with some relatives. The next one is error correction. In this case, the errors will be corrected as soon as possible inside the classroom, and this to avoid creating wrong habits of pronunciation on students. The next one is teacher-centered. In this, the teacher plays the central roles because he or she provides the model that students will imitate. So the students will rely on the knowledge of the teacher at the time of repeating some words or some patterns, some idioms. So the students must have an excellent level of English because he or she will be the model inside of the classroom. The last one is minimal use of the first language because it helps the students use the target language as much as possible inside the classroom. And well, in the case of not understanding a word, if the students do not understand a word, then the teacher must look for synonyms of that word so that the teacher avoids using translators from Spanish to English or from English to Spanish. And in that case, students will get acquainted with lots of words and they will use the English language inside of the classroom as much as possible.
This method uses some techniques to help students automate language patterns and improve their communication skills. Some of these techniques include the first one is chain drill. In this exercise, students engage in a chain conversation. One student makes a question to a partner who answers, and then that partner makes the same question to another student, and so on. For example, student A, what did you do yesterday? Then student B answers, I went to the movies. What did you do yesterday? And student C answers, I studied English. What did you do yesterday? The second technique is substitution drill. The teacher provides a base sentence and then presents a word or phrase that the students must substitute into the sentence while maintaining the grammatical structure. For example, the base sentence is I am going to the store, and the word to substitute is bank. So students will say, I am going to the bank. And transformation drill. Students transform a sentence based on the teacher's instruction, such as changing it from affirmative to negative or from present to past tense. For example, teacher says, he's reading a book. So students had to change to the negative form. Students will say, he is not reading a book. And of course, we have other techniques. Other techniques that can also be implemented include, for example, dialogue memorization, minimal parents drill, backward build-up drill, and role-playing.
Advantages and disadvantages of the audio-lingual method. Advantages of the audio-lingual method. Development of pronunciation and intonation. By focusing on repetition and imitation of native models, audio-lingual method helps students develop accurate pronunciation and intonation. For example, students practice dialogues by imitating native speakers, which helps them pronounce words correctly and use appropriate intonation in different contexts. Then, automation of responses. Due to repetitive practice, students can automate certain structures and responses, allowing them to respond quickly in common situations without having to think too much. Then, grammatical and systematic approach. ALM offers a highly structured approach to a language learning, which can be beneficial for students who prefer a clear and predictable system in their learning. And the last one, effective for memorization. A constant repetition and memorization can be effective for learning vocabulary, phrases, and basic structures. Now, disadvantages of the audio-lingual method. The first one, lack of communicative focus. ALM tends to focus from rather than function, meaning that students may learn to repeat phrases correctly but may struggle to use the language in real, meaningful conversations. Then, boredom and the motivation. A constant repetition and lack of creativity in learning can lead to boredom and demotivation among students, especially those who prefer more interactive learning. Absence of grammar explanation. Although audiolingual method avoids teaching grammar explicitly, some students may feel frustrated by not understanding why certain structures or words are used in specific situations. For example, a student can correctly use the form I'm going in a practice, but feels confused by not understanding why he cannot say I go in the same context, limiting his ability to apply the language in different situations. And the last one, limitations on creativity. By focusing on memorizing dialogues and set phrases, audiolingual method does not encourage creativity or ability for students to generate their own language. This can lead to superficial learning rather than deep, understanding and flexible use of the language.